Well, hello. Welcome to the BeEngaged Podcast, where we bring together brilliant minds to explore technology and innovation, where we discover unique skills and perspectives that drive us forward while fostering empowerment, peace, and unity. So I am your host, Michelle Harper. Today's guest is Dr. Brenda Gazelle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Okay, so do I call you Doctor or Brenda? Which one do you prefer?
You can go with Brenda, but you can introduce me as Doctor.
Okay. All right. So I introduced you. Okay. So Brenda, so you are the director of the graduate program in clinical psychology at Vanguard University and the owner of a private psychotherapy practice in Newport Beach. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to talk about mental health and how to engage in good mental hygiene. That's the topic for today.
Yes, a fun topic.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm excited. So the format of the podcast, I started off with a fun fact. So I'll go in with a fun fact. We'll talk about the content, and at the end, I'll ask you for your favorite quote. So as we're going through it, just think about what's a good quote for us.
All right. I'll try to do that. Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Okay, so fun fact. So when I was researching this, I use AI a lot, and so I on AI I asked some fun facts on psychology and technology and how what are the trends and things. And they said there's a growing popularity of digital detox for regular mental health practice, and it's known that excessive screen time can lead to stress and anxiety. And recent studies suggest that even short, like intentional breaks from devices can improve mood and focus and scheduling that digital detox. It's a movement towards mindful tech use.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that in your practice at all?
Well, I mean, you're starting just at one of the biggest concerns about, especially social media. What do they call it? Doom scrolling, especially for teens. Huge right now. And it's not even digital detox. I was teaching a addictive behaviors class just recently. And, some theorists are saying social media is like the hypodermic needle of our modern age, or the crack cocaine. I mean, it's that heavy on that side. And so when I actually proposed to my students to do as an experiment, 30 days, I just want you to detox from something, could be whatever it was. It could be, that you do drink too much alcohol, but it could be just that you want to say, I'll stop caffeine or sweets or any of these things. I'd say 75% said, I'm going to try social media. And most of them in that 30 days regressed or couldn't do it and talked about how it was so difficult. And that was just graduate students, not even teens, who we hear is that's the hardest to have the detox and to let go of it. And so what we know and what, all the theorists and everyone is saying is because smartphones and especially social media is created to be like a slot machine, or like something addictive. It's meant to have all these whooshing sounds and these ding ding dings and this like and this, and the more and more you do this from a game or from a like and this, that they see that you're getting these dopamine kicks. And so what we understand now, and the more that we've researched it, we do know, and especially for teens, they're saying, 7 to 9 hours a day. Teenagers are saying that they spend more time on social media than they do at school.
Oh, wow.
But that the average American is about 5 to 7 hours a day. So it's very interesting how much we are spending time on it. And so we're looking at the worst part of it right now, but the addiction, because there are good parts, I would say. but that part of it is that they would say, oh my gosh, yes, there's this dopamine kick, this short-term gratification every time I go on. I see something lovely, or I get a like, or I do this and I get this feeling. And so what happens is then, just like if you want to go have fast food, you get this dopamine kick, but then you don't feel good afterwards. And then you have a dopamine deficit. So you're going up and down. And so that's why the digital detox is so profound. And people are saying, we need to try it, but they're saying everyone's struggling with it because we are getting really used to quick dopamine kicks. We're getting really used to short-term gratification more than ever. And this
Mm-hmm.
idea of long-term gratification, of going
Mm-hmm.
towards something that isn't going to give me a quick, good feeling of dopamine, but I know in the long term might give me a feeling of joy and meaning,
Mm-hmm.
that is harder to pursue. I'm not as used to it. And it takes a lot more effort. It actually might ask me to go towards difficulty first than to pleasure first. And
Mm.
so in digital detox, when they say to do it, they almost say you have to go towards a little bit of suffering before you enjoy it.
Oh, interesting. I love that because that resonates throughout all of life. Sometimes when you can't have everything you want all the time right at the exact time. Oh, I have kids. That's what I teach them all the time. You can't get
Right.
everything you want right when you want it. There's something to be said about delayed gratification or just working for it. And those seem to feel deeper and have a longer lasting happiness than the quick and the dopamine that you're talking about. Oh, good. I love it.
Right. I mean, in that way, we're quoting like Viktor Frankl or existentialists who say, man, man's search for meaning, which it's like this idea of the pursuit of happiness. We get really caught up in, even as a nation or as Americans, and we have to kind of go back and say, the pursuit of happiness, though, what does that mean? Real happiness or joy is a byproduct of meaning.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And so if we don't understand that, then we're going over these like quick fast food kicks, this quick game, this quick, oh, I look good, I got a like. And we're not realizing that actually going towards meaning is then going to be where I have this more, um, you know, real joy, real happiness, a real
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Oh, good. I do love experiences. Even with the holidays coming up, I'm asking grandma and others to buy experiences, buy tickets to Legoland, buy tickets
Mm,
to like we don't need
yes.
any more stuff. Like I don't need any more stuff in this house. Okay,
Great
so let's get into
example of dopamine kicks, though, right? That don't
yes,
last. Absolutely. Yes.
that's true. Okay, so let's get into the discussion. So first off, so you're the expert. So, what are the current trends in
Mm,
mental health today? And maybe best practices. We are in the remote world now, post COVID,
mm.
with heavy technology use, as that seems to be a theme. I guess now we're making it a theme for the podcast. But what are the current trends in mental health overall, just generically?
Well, I'd say the biggest trends that I think that are really exciting are things like AI is right now, and apps are finding ways that they can track symptoms. And so,
Oh,
like, say, PTSD victims or
mm-hmm.
vets returning home, or even major depressive symptoms, some of those, where you can actually put in your sleep, your heart rate, your voice tone, they can hook up to that. And when it starts to detect a raise in your heart rate, when it starts to detect something changing in your tone, a hyperarousal state, it can come in and say, let me suggest to you
Take a
a
breather.
mindfulness exercise, take a breather. And if I feel like maybe you need to call out to someone, it can do that. Or are we alert? It seems like you're this hyper aroused now. This is something that is so new and so exciting
Yeah.
that we've never had before, that I think can be life
Wow.
changing. So in those ways, that's so exciting. On the other side, like with education, I've never, I mean, I'm 50. I've been in academia for, 20 plus years, 23 years or so. And I've never had in my life where students can just have at their fingertips all the information.
Oh, wow. That's very, very powerful is access to information.
Yes. And then I just remind them, where did that AI get it? And then can you look more? And then, yes, you can get it all online. And then what does it mean? And then we have to just then be using it as being a psychologist or someone trained in the field. Am I able to see, is it reliable? Is it valid? Good research. Where does it
Mm-hmm.
come from? Am I actually being a really good consumer of research? And those are the things I think we have to train to do, because we want to just take it in and assume now that because it's on the computer, it's in print, that
Mm-hmm.
it's right, it's correct, and not just one source of research that we could debate about and actually say wasn't reliable. So those are the pieces that I'm kind of pushing my students to use, but then also going, wow, how exciting. I can remember having to go to a library, look through all kinds of books, copy machines out, just copy
Time.
the
That took
the pages
forever.
and
The
and
encyclopedias, the
put it all down, and now you can do this in such a different way. And so this is so exciting. You have so much, but now you're asked to actually really, I think, even consider when you take a course on statistics or research, or phenomenological understandings of hermeneutics. Is this good research? Has someone
Mhm.
thought through it? All of these things. And that is something that I think we are slow at,
Mhm.
that we're just assuming. And the same thing we do with the news, isn't it? Like the news said it, so it must be right or good, instead of saying, well, where's that research from? And
Well,
who
we're
did
learning you
it?
got to back it up. You got to say, "Hey, is that correct? That seems
That's
a little
right.
off. Is somebody just putting content out there to get attention and clicks, or is that actually real?" That's the question now.
That's right. So teaching that idea and teaching that desire to want to look further, I think, is exciting. But I think there's so many great ways in which mental health can be changed by having that there. And then students, I know we have a lot of ESL students who are like new to English as a second language, but are wanting to learn. And now they have this translation app, or we can even do
Oh yeah.
online, and they have captions.
Mhm.
And then you can take a transcript after and maybe look through and make sure you understood it all. Like all these tools that would never have been there before.
Mhm.
Oh, it's powerful. And then we just have to say, how do we use those in ways that are responsible?
I love it. So the wearables, so the AI in mental health is using wearables, using those, and then there's apps that are specific for mental health reasons. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm going to look that up after this and see what those apps are. That's so exciting.
It is really exciting. And actually, there was just the FDA approved something for vets that was like one of the most powerful apps that said it was like changing lives for people, because they will minimize their symptoms when they are
Mm,
feeling hyperarousal or having flashbacks or feeling out of control, because of course they are. They're not wanting to reach out. It's like, I know it's fine, it's fine, I'm strong, I'm good.
yeah,
And
I'm
then they're,
self-sufficient. I can do it myself. And you're like, "Ah, you got to reach out too." Yeah.
and they don't even realize, almost, they don't
Hmm.
realize how bad it is until it just is too bad. And so, but their whole body's saying something different. And so the app has someone call them and
Yeah, the
say, even,
self-regulation.
yeah,
It's really hard to recognize when you need to step in and self-regulate, especially if you're an addictive person, like, or kids that have a difficult time, calming down, essentially, when kids need to calm down. The
right.
self-regulation is really hard. If you have somebody tipping you off at the exact moment, you're going to learn self-regulation a whole lot faster as well.
Right. And then you actually have someone who calls and says, I know you said you're fine, but I got a tip from this technology that said your whole body says you're not. So could
Oh,
we talk? I mean, that's pretty powerful.
yeah. So, in your practice, in your clinical psychology on the mental health trends, what are and you've been doing this for many years.
Hmm.
What are people coming to you with first and foremost in these recent years? Is there a different in mental health trends, or is it just the same? We all kind of are
Hmm.
dealing with the same type of concepts, but is it the same, or are there trends that are changing?
Great question. I think a couple things to think about. One is that the pandemic did change all sorts of things.
Okay.
So what happened was, if I'm already having certain mental health issues, um, being isolated, not having connection, um, is exacerbating those issues. And
Mm,
so that happened. And so that was why telehealth was so powerful as a way in which we could connect. But then there was this whole piece about telehealth, which is meeting someone on Zoom. Uh, a lot of therapists had never done that, or different, you know, they had different ones, but Zoom was a popular one. But the idea is that you would meet in telehealth and meet on screen. And what so many people started finding was, and we're still doing more research about, is its own interesting modality. That for some people, it was profoundly helpful. That they would go, oh my gosh, actually, all my issues might be exacerbated by pandemic or all these different things, but because there's some distance between us, I'm able to be more vulnerable with you now.
I would
That
agree with that. I open up more when I'm on the Zoom or Teams or whatever than in person because it's when people are in my space, I'm kind of like, ooh, I mean, and I'm an extrovert. I can only imagine an introvert.
Right. So isn't that fascinating? So
Hmm.
those certain people were saying this is really advantageous. This is beneficial. Then there was the other side that they had these clients who were saying this won't work at all.
They said,
And
I
then
need to have
some
that physical presence.
presence for me, or even some co-regulation, maybe because of trauma or whatever it is.
Oh,
And
okay.
then some would even say, um, those people, I had quite a few colleagues who said we just stopped using the telehealth altogether as the screen, but we used the phone instead because
Mm.
there was something about being able to hear each other but not having to try to look at each other that helped. And so all of these modalities are being studied as their own pieces now, which has never really been looked at. And what's interesting is there is some work looking at attachment styles. And I mean, you
Mm.
said extrovert, which I thought was very astute, right? Like maybe an extrovert would do better or an introvert with a different modality. We can also look at someone with a more avoidant attachment or an anxious attachment or a secure attachment and how they would use that modality because of their ability to be close or wanting to feel far away and how much privacy they need, and that actually this could be helpful. Or you could even extrapolate it to someone who say has social anxiety, or previously some of the therapy for say someone who had specific phobias or panic attacks and agoraphobia.
Mm.
They would often say, the goal is to finally get to the office. We would talk
Mm.
about that because
Yeah.
it's so scary. We would just say, let's talk on the phone for a while. And then finally you could, meet at the office. That would be like a big, we're
Big
doing it
deal.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so, but that this is true for a lot of people in different ways. Understanding their attachment, their proximity, their intimacy, their ability to feel attuned to how much closeness they can have, and that how, in some ways, a veil of privacy does sometimes help us, for certain people,
Hmm.
share.
Oh, good. I love that. Okay, so we did talk about telehealth and AI and a little bit of social media. So let's talk about social media can be a problem, but let's talk about how it can connect people. I have a theory, not may not be coming to fruition right now,
Love it.
because social media has gone a lot of negativity because people can put any content on there whatsoever. It can be absolute lies. There's no repercussions because there's no ability to sue any of the platforms.
All right.
And so you can put any information that you want on there. However, what I think the positive part is in the future, and maybe even now, is just this: connecting people, connecting peers, connecting neighbors in a way that we've never connected before. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
we don't rely so much on the media reports that are not in a cycle and used for different reasons. But maybe the people kind of rising up together and being on social media together and talking to each other on social media. I'm hoping that that's the positiveness. Do you see,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think is the positive part of social media, and how can we change it to be more positive versus what some of the negative that there is today?
Yeah, good question. And most research shows that, interestingly, people who already are connected in their own life, meaning they have like some social support system, seem to use social media in more positive ways.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. But that those who don't, right, they seem to feel it in more negative ways. And that they're
Yeah.
trying to reach out, but they're almost then, I mean, we could interpret it as reenacting the distance or rejection or the scarcity or the limits of what it is, because we do have to honor that it's limited. And in so many times, if you think about it, I have social connections already, I have a community, then we can think of social media being that plus. Like, and now this is
Yeah.
a way to add into it or make it better or make it good, or like, see, we did that. And now let's all look at it together and enjoy it, versus someone who doesn't have it
Hmm.
is trying and saying, oh, see, I'm not involved. I'm not able. And so there's
So it's
that piece.
accentuating social media in some cases, it's accentuating what's in your heart. It's accentuating who you are. to make it either way better or way worse. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's kind of what the research shows. And so
Ah,
if you think about it that way, then if we don't have connection and we're using it as a way to try to find it, we're finding it's not working. It's
mm-hmm.
that it does need to kind of start outside of you, and then maybe it can add to it. But when we try to use it as a modality on its own, that it becomes more of a detriment or a feeling of loneliness or isolation, and turns into more of that addictive behavior piece
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, now you liked me today but now you didn't, but was there really any real connection with that person? So what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing in many ways is reaching out to people who you don't already know, who there wouldn't be that
Mm-hmm.
normal appreciation or like, and hoping to get some kind of positive reinforcement that hasn't been developed outside of the media itself.
I love that. I actually resonate with that. I think that's very valid. So then, if we're looking internally for mental health, um, just your authenticity seems to be the biggest part, and just kind of getting rid of what culture and society wanted me to
Mm.
be, and kind of becoming myself and
Like,
being authentic into who
yeah.
I am, and saying, you know what, I've got great skills. So what do you think about the authenticity aspect, and how do people become more authentic so that even when they are on technology, that
Mm.
authenticity ends up being what's projected as opposed to anything negative?
Oh, what a powerful, good question, right? Because that is all that is always being analyzed and discussed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I seeing the real deal? Am I seeing the real you? And are these snapshots of me just scrolling and seeing the person's best life, and then me comparing myself? Well, why aren't I like them? Because their best life is being shown, and I should have this and all of that, and then other people kind of trying to overcorrect and not put makeup on, or going, this is my worst life, or all these things, and
Yeah.
playing with it. It seems it gets very confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would we do that? I don't think that something frozen is able to be really authentic. That would be
Mm-hmm.
mine.
What do you mean frozen?
As a
Explain what.
picture, a
Oh,
whole, a
okay.
moment. And that
Yes.
isn't
Yeah.
that what social media is in many ways? It's a moment. And so, yes, you're honoring
Mm-hmm.
a moment we can get excited about, we can celebrate it. But we have to, just as people honor, it's a moment. Anything frozen or momentarily is just that. It's not who that person is. It's just a moment of who they are. As soon as
Mm-hmm.
I reify it or make it into a statue, right? Frozen is what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, then I can't, that isn't authentic, because it's just a moment of who they are. So that's the very hard work of forgiving myself for being human, forgiving other people for being human, and just deciding that as if I'm going to offer up um, pictures, it's probably going to be when I'm celebrating.
Yeah. Well, it's the best moments. It's the best frozen moments in your life. And that's
That's
what
right.
you're
Yeah. And
projecting.
many
You're
people
like,
do it
hey,
for a photo album. And then to say, well, you should show me your horrible moments. Well, I don't know that we're suddenly going to encourage that. And then does that
yeah.
mean we're not authentic? I think we're authentically saying this is a certain platform.
Yeah. So if
And can we
people are,
accept the limits of that platform, but not
yeah.
trying to make it be a platform that in some ways is something I should be going to for attunement or being mirrored, but
Mm-hmm.
rather just maybe a photo book of people's celebrations, or ways in which they want to be or trying to be seen as unique and gain some, what I would call, healthy narcissism.
Yeah. And people see that, and that may lift their spirits because it's a fun, happy event. And other
Hmm.
people, based on where they're at in their life, may see that same picture or a series of pictures and say, gosh, I feel so bad about myself. So
Why
it's
not me?
completely, yeah, it's completely in the
Mhm.
your authenticity and who you are and where you are at that time. So as
But
somebody,
see, you
oh,
can't do anything about the other.
yeah, you can't control how other people are perceiving you ever. You can, I always say I'm managing perceptions in my life. That's it. Because reality is everybody's perception. Their perception is their reality. And so
Right.
you have to just walk into it knowing that that's just how it is.
So I think that's the work. It's on the other side. It's not how I show up. I mean, show up however you want to show up. Really, we can only control ourselves. And I think the work is for anyone who uses social media or anything else. It's a tool, but they would have to grieve the limits of that, and they would have to grieve and understand. Um, yeah, this isn't a reality. This isn't me getting a true relationship of attunement. And if I'm using it as a substitute for that, I'm going to have to grieve and I will be let down.
Yeah. And so as people are, leaning in towards being more authentic, any recommendations? How do they start that? How do you mentally realize that, culture, your childhood, perceptions,
Mm.
can't control any of it, but I can be authentic? And how do I become more authentic? How do I go down that road? What's that process of becoming more authentic in my own life?
Oh, wow. Well, that's such a powerful question. I mean, I want to go like a little deep with it if you don't mind. I'll take a
Sure.
moment. But I
Yeah.
mean, so what you're talking about is that we all have a false self. I mean, that would be the idea that we all have a perfectionistic persona or a false self that we present to the world. But most of us then also have like things inside we don't show, and that's normal and natural. But the work of every human is to say, how aware can I get of my false self? And this perfectionistic persona, and of the things that make me feel more vulnerable and integrate them,
Mm-hmm.
not have one or the other. But the problem is that so often, say social media or on anything else, we either say, I'm going to present the false self, the perfectionist persona now. Aren't I
Mm-hmm.
great and wonderful? And you saw me, right? Or I'll present the really sad me, the stuff you've never saw before, the horrid, right? As
Yeah.
if and those are two sides that both are you.
Yeah.
You see, but instead of having them be so split and saying, I'm either going to show you all the sadness and the horror that I never show anyone, or the beauty and the wonder, is that I work so much in my life to integrate both so that when I'm showing up in life, I'm able to be both
Mm-hmm.
more and more, an integrated person is able to say, I yeah, have all these great things, but I also humbly have strengths and weaknesses. And so I'll
Mm-hmm.
show those both as I go along, as I talk,
Mm-hmm.
as I am. It's not me coming up and saying, this is the time to show the best self, or this is the time to show the weak self, but to honestly and consistently say, I am both weak and strong. And then we invite um, forgiveness for being human, forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
of the other for being human, and the forgiveness of ourselves for being human. And then real relationship takes place. That's authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. And many times in our culture, and it's women and men, it's not just women, but I have talked to a lot of women in my life, and, I have that experience. It's my own
Mm-hmm.
personal experience.
Yes.
We tend to go through life with each person that you're with. At least I've had a tendency in my life historically to try to be who they want me to be in that moment and
Mm.
respond to them because it's going to
Mm.
be more positive. I get a much more positive feedback when I talk or act or say things the way that they want me to say them. And so I'm in basically essentially pleasing them in the moment and maybe not thinking about, is that really how I want to say that, or is that because I know that they're going to appreciate it and accept it and so I get what I want. However, I'm not sure that was exactly, my whole self, authentic self, but I
Mm.
got what I wanted out of it. I got the job, I got the approval, I got the work done, or, whatever it ends up being. So, how do you, I mean, you grow up in that culture. You grow up every day, and especially women, different people want you to be different every time you talk to them. Each person wants you to be a certain person, and you have to either say, okay, I'll be that person and I'll get past this job or I'll get past whatever, or you know what, I'm just going to be my authentic self and I might not be as successful in life,
Mm.
knowing that my authentic self isn't exactly who that particular person wanted me to be that day. I'm not going to be as successful. So how do you get through those scenarios?
Oh, what a beautiful question, Michelle. And I want to just bring it right back to social media for a second, because then it goes back to just in general. But if you think about it, right, it isn't how we do it in general. I think I heard someone say that I can push likes on things I don't like almost in life or on social media, and my algorithm changes accordingly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I notice, wait a second, I'm getting more of on my algorithm, say like on social media or like on my scrolling, of things that I don't want, but it's because I thought I should
Yeah.
like that for a person. And now I'm getting mirrored almost the things that I was supposed to
Yeah.
say. And so we can do that in our own life almost. Isn't it that fascinating? We can almost
That's
set our
true.
algorithms to say, I'm going to say what you need me to hear. And now I'm getting all this feedback and stuff, but it's not even really what I want. And so I would say, isn't that it is such a gorgeous and difficult place. What we have to do, and I think that's the difficulty, but the beauty of getting to knowing and accessing self is that we stop and we say, I also have to decide what this is about. Like, is this an authentic relationship I'm in every day with, like, say, a family member, a child, a spouse, a parent, or someone else? And
Mm-hmm.
then do I believe and feel it's worth it and they have the capacity to change?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, then I'm going to show up and want to work through and say, I want repair and I want to see something else. Then there are times when we're at workplaces or politically or other places that we look and we go, no one's wanting to actually know me
Mm-hmm.
and may not have capacity for change. So I do get to decide then that I can be authentic, or I could be a little more, and I think we don't always like to honor this, manipulative
Mm-hmm.
or political, and decide to show up in a certain way to get my needs met and make them comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have to say, how much did that cost me at the end of the day?
Well, it goes into the algorithm. That algorithm plays for years and years. And then you
Mhm.
say, hey, is this the life I wanted? Is this, because is this who I am? They're accepting the person that I wanted them to see. Maybe not me, but they're accepting the person I wanted them to see. That's interesting.
Beautiful.
I
And
haven't
so
actually
then,
thought that.
right? So often what happens, and especially at that stage of life too, is that there is a part of us that says, well, this was working for me. It's such a good self-care system. I'm just going to keep going and ignore it. Or there's a part of us, and sometimes the body keeps a score and we get body aches, or we have dreams, or we have other parts that just say, I can't do it this any, I can't do it this way any longer.
Hmm. Or you just
That's
get older.
that's what
And
people
you say, you
call
know
a
what, I don't even
midlife
care
crisis,
anymore.
though, usually, is that something knocks enough that we say, I want it to change. But that would
Yeah.
mean that something would have to crumble and something else would have to be, there would have to be a change. I would have to show up differently and people would be disappointed. And then I would have to learn how to tolerate the negative reactions of others in a way that I've never done before,
Yeah.
because choosing to be authentic and known is more important.
Yeah. Oh, I
Mm.
love that. Okay, so turning just a little bit, so we're coming into an election season, as we always
Woo!
are, and there's a
Yes.
lot of division right now, and I think everybody is feeling maybe not seen. They're not feeling like they're being
Mm,
valued,
mm.
and so as we go into whatever the election results end up being, how do we mentally kind of go into it being, I don't feel valued, I don't feel seen, I don't feel like I'm being supported, and so won, or so and so is now going to be determining a lot of the future. How do you mentally go into that and handle what happens, and just try to be as positive as possible and accepting as possible? Do you have
Mhm.
any suggestions of on that side of the house?
And then you think about it all over technology and all over the
Yeah,
media,
and it's at you every
bombarded.
day. It's just yelling at you. That you got nobody in real life is actually yelling. Nobody in real life is actually
Yeah,
um, nearly as animated, or at least in
yeah.
my life. But when you get, as soon as you get home with the media, anything social media, technology, it's just out of control with trying to get attention. And so then it gets inflated and everything's really, really divisive. So, but how do you mentally kind of, there's a lot of people with a lot of anxiety right now. How do we get through that?
Yeah. I think it goes back to what you were just talking about, because you were talking about authenticity. And if I'm going to hold on to myself, then I realize I can only control myself. And then I have to realize that my work is to regulate myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if someone around me is in the state of not being okay,
Mm-hmm.
then I learn ways. And maybe that's, again, it's kind of a fun 180, where apps and things could even come back again. And we think of those calm apps. Those have been incredibly helpful for people. But ways in which I regulate myself and I say, I get to say, I'm just as worthy. My needs, my feelings, my experience,
Mm-hmm.
my way of seeing the world is just as valid as anyone else's.
Mm-hmm.
No one is superior in the way that they're thinking. And even though they may be louder, even though they may be more anxious, even though they may be imploding or crazy seeming, right? My experience is just as valid. And so I get to say my soul is just as worthy here and say, and it doesn't mean I have to get loud, and I can just kind of trying to find my own welcoming objects, my own calm objects that regulate me as someone else is so dysregulated. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the work of everything in life.
That is.
Politics is just an example, but it's like when our kids do that, or when our spouse does that, or when our, anyone does that. And we have to say to ourselves, you know, oh, wow, they're just trying to stamp me out
Mm-hmm.
because they're so anxious.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean what I'm saying or how I feel or my experience isn't true. It just means that they don't know how to manage their own anxiety
Mm-hmm.
in that moment. And so they're dysregulated. So what I do is say, oh, okay. So what I'm saying is really hard for you to hear. Maybe you need to take some time to relax and come back and be able to stay regulated as we have this discussion. But that's usually what it is. If I'm not the one yelling, screaming, or doing of it, what you're realizing is I'm just looking at a lot of dysregulated people. And what I'm saying is, okay, can I stay regulated as I'm around this dysregulation? And sometimes it's very hard. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why people take breaks. But really, it's just saying, I'm as worthy as anybody else and I'm as valid as anybody else. And then I can authentically show up, even if that means that they have negative reaction towards me and they want to stamp me out. And that does take a lot of
Yeah.
strength and courage. And I think that is almost about civil liberties, isn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
fighting for me saying I get to have a seat at the table as much as anybody else in politics or in relationship.
Yeah, that's great. So thousands and thousands of years, there's been people. How did they deal with all of this without the help of these tools and psychologists way back in the day? Did like
Mm.
human beings in general? This is a very broad,
Mm.
really
Love it. This is
crazy out
fun.
of
I
it
love the
question.
way you think. It's so fun. I'm having so much fun. Yeah, it's great.
Thousands of generations. How did people
Mm.
deal with this? With
Mm.
all of the anxiety? Or do you think that we've changed as people
Mm.
and now we have to have these tools to because we're so, I don't know, maybe more effective or
Mm.
engaged, or there's so many more people in the world. It just seems like how did the human race exist with all of this without the tools that we have today and the knowledge of regulating yourself and
Mm.
authenticity and everything that we've been talking
Mm.
about today?
What a big, broad question for like a whole nother podcast, but a fun idea. I mean, and then you bring in technology to that as well. And what I think about is, well, we didn't at first, right? I mean,
Just suppressed everything.
uh,
Everybody just suppressed everything and said, you know what, everything's fine.
well, I think we are looking at like there's a lot of survival of the fittest, and there was a lot of like scary things that have happened,
Hmm.
right,
Yeah.
throughout history,
Yeah.
where the strongest won. And so, in many ways, the more that we're able to stop and get regulated and say other things matter other than who's strongest and more powerful is a more sophisticated idea of protecting the weak. And
Hmm.
that's a very different idea that doesn't happen when we get really scared, if we're looking at
Hmm.
thousands of years. And then, in a different way of thinking about it, I would say uh, people have fought for the right to have a seat at the table. And that's why I said civil liberties. I think
Hmm.
that's why you still go and you're still asking me, and we're still asking on social media how I show up authentically.
Yeah.
What
That's
you're
very
asking
helpful.
is a very powerful question: is are other people's needs and feelings superior to mine, or am I allowed to say my needs, feelings, and experience and showing up authentically as is equal as yours? And then, can I tolerate if you have negative reactions?
Well, I love it. You are very interesting I've had a very, very fun time chatting with you. I know I've taken up a lot of time. It's starting to get late where we are. Okay, so the quote of the podcast. So
Hmm.
I think my quote was, well, it was basically what you were saying towards the end. I wish I wrote it down, but it was just that my soul is valued, and
Hmm.
I know that. And that's all I need to know. And there can be chaos going on around me, but I am valued. My soul is valued. And I just have to ground in that. It wasn't exactly the quote, but that was your essence, essentially. That was my favorite part so far.
I love that. I mean, just as anyone else's, I think we forget that. That's healthy entitlement. And I
Yeah.
think there's a piece of that on social media as well, but anywhere where we swing from over entitlement and superiority because we felt like for so long we haven't been able to acknowledge that truth. And then we go to disentitlement. Oh, I did that too much. So now I'm going to shrink down instead of just holding that nice space in the middle of I'm just as worthy as anyone else. And I'm going to stand up for what I feel and I know.
Oh, good. What's your favorite quote of the podcast? Did
My
anything
favorite
jump
quote of the
out?
podcast. I
The
wish I
crazy,
could. I
we've
wish
got
I wrote mine
generations of people
too.
how to question.
I think that might have been my. We how have we survived without psychological tools this whole time? Right.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
How have we survived?
I don't know if we have. Right.
Yeah, I guess we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Brenda Gazelle, for joining me on the podcast today. I really appreciated our time and your insights and your thoughts and anything that you wanted to say about your clinic or any specifics on your clinic if you wanted folks to give you a call or if they need any help.
Well, I moved from doing a group practice for about 18 years to now doing a sole practitioner practice, and I do work on complex PTSD and trauma, and so yes, always reach out if that's something you want to work with me on or need referrals. And other
Absolutely.
than that, just love this conversation and appreciate you, Michelle.
Great. All right. Well, her practice is in Newport, California. If you look her up on the internet, you'll find it. And thanks again for joining, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you so much.